You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 110, Speaking Lingala. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. This week, we're talking about the Lingala language and Congolese culture with Melissa, the founder and teacher behind Lingala Lessons. In this episode, Melissa tells us about growing up in Paris speaking both Lingala and French, and how this often felt like living in two different countries, France and DRC. She tells us about how her parents made the effort to reinforce Lingala and their Congolese roots at home, and how Black American TV shows were impactful in African French communities. We talk about Lingala grammar and learn how the language is used in DRC, Republic of Congo, and other Lingala-speaking regions. Melissa tells us about Congolese music and why it's really important to Congolese people, and keep listening to find out where we can experience Congolese culture and food in Paris. Big thank you to Melissa for this conversation and for sharing parts of your languages and culture with all of us. If you enjoy episodes of Speaking Tongues, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, and like and subscribe on YouTube so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. Special shout out to Speaking Tongues' recent supporters and patrons, Heidi L., Linnea H., and Pat N. If you've been a longtime listener of the show or even a recent listener, you can now pledge ongoing support for the show on buymeacoffee.com or on patreon.com. And as you know, I wrote a book. My food zine of international language and cuisine, Taste Buds Volume 1, is available now for purchase. Check social media for the sneak peek inside the book, and make sure you purchase one for yourself and one for your friends. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I am here today with Melissa. How are you today, Melissa?
I'm fine, Elle. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to talk to you and so excited to learn more about your language of Lingala. This Lingala is making its debut. This is my first conversation about Lingala, so I'm pumped. I'm so excited to have this conversation and to learn from you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your invitation.
I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
Well, my first languages are Lingala and French because I learned Lingala and French simultaneously at the same time from childhood, and I've learned to speak English later.
And you live in Paris, you grew up in Paris, and what was that like having French and Lingala as your primary languages?
Well, I think that for me, I was mixing all the time, both cultures, both languages, because those both languages and cultures are different. But I was always obliged to switch because, when I was going out, it was French. When I was at home, it was like living in Congo because, my parents were for them, it was very important for them to teach us the culture through food, through
Mm,
music, through languages. So it's like I was living
mm.
in two different countries in one day, from
Wow.
from morning to evening. I was in France, and when I was coming home, it was Congo and Africa. So I think that from my childhood until I left my parents' house, I was living in two different countries.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, I think it's cool. And I mean, but maybe, as a kid, was that ever confusing for you? Or was there ever a time where you felt maybe pressured to kind of choose a side or choose a more dominant language? Or did they always work in harmony with one another for you?
For me as a child, for me it was I was not asking myself if I was pressured or not. For me it was normal,
Mm,
but I felt like I was pressured at school because unfortunately, many teachers used to tell African parents that if African parents told African languages to their kids, they used to say that they would have difficulties to speak French, which is totally wrong because it is scientifically
Right.
proved that a baby, a child, have has the capacity to learn so many things in a few time. And I felt like I was pressured more at school, but not at home. At home,
Mm.
uh, I would say that at home, I was pressured to learn my culture because, unfortunately, when I was a child, it was a difficult period because at that moment, being African was not well seen by the society. Being African was like, it was like an assault to be called African, and my parents were struggling to teach us how important our culture was. So
Mm.
despite their will, they pressured us, but not to make us suffer, but they were just it was like they were against the world. I mean, it's like you know that something is right. You're trying to teach that to your kid, but unfortunately the society is preventing you to do that. So you
Yeah.
have no other
Yeah.
choice but to pressure your child, not in a bad way, but you're obliged to force them, to say it's like child who don't want to eat how can I say that? Who don't want to eat veg, which is good for their health,
Mm.
and you obliged to
Hmm.
pressure them to eat that because you know that this is good for them. So it was approximately
Yeah.
the same thing with my family.
How did your parents keep their Congolese culture and Lingala language alive in your home, within your family, or within your community?
First of all, by obliging us to speak Lingala at home, which was totally crazy at the time because at the time, as I used to say in France when I was a kid around the 90s, speaking African language was totally discouraged by the society, by families, and they obliged us first of all to speak our language at home. And through the
Mm.
time, they became more, I would say, more cool. It was through music, through food. They really helped us to discover Congolese culture through documentaries, through cartoons, through all the things that they had in order to make us discover our countries and not hate our roots. Because unfortunately, when you live in a society when they're laughing at you because you come from Africa, when they're laughing at you because you have different culture, it's complicated as a child, to really accept your culture. So they try to teach us things. First of all, it was an obligation, but through the time, it was more cool, and with the time, we just start to make our own researches on our culture.
When did you notice things starting to change about that attitude about, people like you said being young in the 90s, and people, I guess, looking down on you for being African, to where now, at least what I notice as an outsider, as an American looking at Parisian culture and the things that I see, it's like it's celebrated. Like there is more of a celebration of the African roots and your African heritage and like Afro Francophonie. When did you start noticing that changing? Or did you?
I think that things changed in France thanks to American TV shows that was broadcast that we used to see on TV. Because in France, unfortunately, we didn't had enough representations, enough healthy representations of African people on TV. Unfortunately, when I used to watch TV when I was a kid, the only times I used to see African people, unfortunately, people were laughing at them. You know, and the only good representations of African people, Black people that we could see, it was through American TV shows like The Prince of Bel Air, like Cosby Show. You know, that was the only representations that we had, and I think that things start to change thanks to the change that happened to America. When the nappy movement, um, thanks to Black Panther movies. And what I really love about Black Panther is that it was maybe the first time that we had the opportunity of seeing African heroes with African names, with African languages, with African culture. It was the first time, and I think that um, Parisian kids now, they're not ashamed of of where they come from. They're just proud of it because on the media they can see good representations, which we didn't had when we were kids. So I think that thanks to our brothers and sisters from America, I think that thanks to Afro Americans, Parisian kids are not proud of where they come from. They're not ashamed of saying like I'm from Congo, I'm from I don't know Senegal. They're not ashamed of that. And I think that it's really thanks to medias.
And you know what, to be honest with you, I feel like that's kind of the same thing. The shows that you mentioned, that was really for us a lot of the first time that we saw positive representation of ourselves on TV, and where we
Yeah.
weren't playing like the maid or the gangster or the pimp or any kind of negative stereotypical caricatures in our community. So I'm happy to hear that that message even reached over to overseas, over to Europe, and gave gave you guys encouragement as much as it gave us encouragement too.
Yeah. Yeah, it gave us a lot of encouragement because it was the only the representation that we had. I mean, except that, it was like people. I mean, it's like well, I remember when I was a kid. Before the beginning of each class, they used to call us by our names. Just to check that every kid is in the class, and every time, every day, every year, when it was my turn to be called, everybody was laughing at my name. You know,
Oh God.
everybody was laughing at my name, and they used to say that, yeah, your name is weird, your name sounds weird, you need to change your name because it's ugly. And as a kid, when you
Oh
hear that,
no.
it's very violent,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
I really thank my parents because every time I was coming home crying because of that, they were telling me that no, your name is not ugly. Your name is who you really are. I mean, it's like when I remembered what my parents used to tell me, it reminds me uh, a famous scene, in Lion King when Mufasa says to his son, "Remember who you are." You know, you are my son. And my parents used to help us, to develop self-esteem because at school it was complicated for everything.
Right.
When, for instance, I
Yeah.
remember when in I had a teacher who used to taught history, and every time he had to talk about Africa, every time he had to talk about Congo, it was always with ugly words. It was always with discrimination, and when you only two or three black kids in the class, it's a little embarrassing. So it was not easy,
Yeah.
and I'm very happy because. Um, the kids they're not growing up in Paris, they have the chance to have healthy representations. So for me, it's hopeful.
Yeah. It's hopeful, and thank you to your parents and your family for keeping you grounded and making sure that you know your roots and where you come from, and helping to, help you to continue to be proud of your lineage and your heritage. And that's always really important when parents do that work for kids. And thank you also for what you're doing with your platform about Lingala and sharing the language and your culture with everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your platform because it's a way for me to talk about it, and I'm really grateful for your invitation.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the language itself. Let's talk about
Yeah,
Lingala. Tell us, you mentioned DRC. Tell us where it's
yeah.
spoken. First of all, let's orient people. Where are we hearing Lingala spoken?
Lingala is spoken in many countries in Africa. It's spoken in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in Republic of Congo, also in Angola and in Central Africa. And it's a language that is spoken by millions and millions of people. And it's a language that is also used by many many singers, many many Congolese singers around the world, as Fali Pupa, Kofi Olomide, Inosbi that are famous nowadays.
Tell us about the language. Does it have dialects? Is it tonal? Is it gendered? Are there any particular greetings that we have for certain people, like elders or prominent people, children, teachers, parents, etc.?
Well, first of all, Lingala belongs to the Bantu language family. It is a oral and writing language, but unfortunately, few Congolese write it. Lingala is a language and another dialect. Moreover, I'm always surprised that the term dialect is used to define the languages of African countries, and I find that this term tends to, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it tends to diminish or deny the cultural heritage of the languages, which is why I don't like
Mm-hmm.
using it. But what I
Okay.
can say about Lingala is that, unlike French and English, Lingala does not have gendered, definite, or indefinite articles such as he or she in English. And instead of the pronouns he or she, we say, for instance, a in Lingala, in Lingala. And what is very important to mention about Lingala is that there is no difference in the language based on the origin of the speakers. For example, people who speak in DRC and in Republic of Congo, because people who are from DRC and Republic of Congo are the same people. Both countries have
Mm.
the same culture. The only difference is that they have been colonized by different European countries. DRC
Right.
has been colonized by Belgium, and French has colonized the Republic of Congo. It's like two brothers who have been separated, but they remain brothers no matter what. And what is very important for me to add is the fact that Lingala is, how can I say that? Um, Lingala comes from a culture where the respect of elders is very important. For instance, unlike in French and in English, it's very rude to call a person that is older than you by his or her name. If you don't know a person's name, and if you know that this person is older than you go into call him
Mm-hmm.
or her mama or papa, which means mama or daddy. It is the equivalent of sir and madam as a sign of respect.
How are we? How do you form sentences with Lingala? Tell us a bit about the grammar or just interesting bits about how to construct the language itself.
Well, the construction of Lingala sentences is approximately like in English, I would say. I think that what I noticed with my pupils is that English pupils have more. It's more easier for them to speak Lingala because Lingala in English are approximately similar in the structure. Contrary to French, French
Mm.
is a complicated language, so for French people to speak Lingala, it's complicated, but it's not really hard. The only difference between Lingala and English is that there's no gender. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
in order to say brother or sister in Lingala, we would only say ndeko, which means brother and sister at the same time.
Okay.
uh, Lingala is an oral language, so it seems for many people who doesn't speak the language, when they hear some Lingala stuff, they for them they feel like we are singing when we speak in Lingala. So Lingala is a,
Oh, wow.
yeah, because it's a very oral, it's an oral language. And
Mm-hmm.
what I can also say is that all languages are constructed with linguistic borrowings from other languages, and Lingala is not an exception. There are terms from another language that's called Kikongo, which was one of the languages spoken in both Congo. And there are, what I can say is that because of the multiple migratory flows that the Congolese have made to the West, there are many terms in English and French that have been included in Lingala and that are part of Lingala today. For instance, we have a verb that is kodaye, which means in Lingala to die. And kodaye is a combination of Lingala with the prefix ko, which indicates the infinitive. But we also have the next daye, which comes from the English verb to die. And the combination of the both word ko and daye forms the verb kodaye, which means to die in Lingala. So thanks and because of the multiple migratory flows, there is a lot of words in Lingala that comes from French, that comes from English. There's a lot of mixed words in our language.
I like that. And I guess because there's so many speakers across such a wide part of the region, there is a lot of influence from, and I wonder, even as you said, see, I have another question and I hope I don't forget
Yeah,
it, but I want to I want to ask you this first. As you said, you mentioned Lingala being spoken, for example, in Angola. And I know that
yeah,
Angola has, Portuguese
mm,
colonization roots. And the language, you said it doesn't change, from country to country. But like,
yeah.
if someone from Angola, do you notice borrowings from that colonial Portuguese language into Lingala?
Well, I what I can notice is the fact that unfortunately, many existing terms in Lingala are unfortunately no longer used, and depending on the country where when the person lives, many of existing terms in Lingala have been replaced by Portuguese or by Spanish or by German or French or English terms. For instance, when it comes for numbers, numbers in Lingala exist, but the Congolese mostly use numbers in French, Portuguese, English, which is linked to a policy of self censorship and a desire to be better integrate into Western countries, which have been adopted by many Congolese.
Yeah, that's interesting that the number system would be in the colonized language and not in. I wonder why that would be. Maybe for commercial reasons, or I don't
I
know.
think that I don't think that it's for commercial reasons because if we take the time to look at it, to look to Chinese people, for instance, of course they speak in English because English is an important language for commercial transactions and so many things. But they keep their numbers, they keep their alphabet, they keep their languages. But I think that for us, because of colonization, because of slavery, because of many traumas that we've known in our people, I think that unfortunately we at a certain time we rejected what was ours, you know, to keep what was from the West, because unfortunately during colonization, um, the European countries made African people believe that their culture was ugly, that their culture was unnecessary, that everything that belongs to them was not had no value, and as a consequence, we start to reject what was ours. And now nowadays we are in a different dynamic. We're trying to to come back to the roots. We're trying to come back home. So I think that it would take a lot of time, to come back home. But what I can say is that there's a dynamic to make researches, to know more about where we come from and all that stuff. And this is what I noticed with my students.
I love that. It's going to happen. It's just a
Yeah,
matter of when it's going to happen.
yeah, it would take time, but I'm hopeful about that.
Yeah. The question I had for you earlier was about the gender and the not having the specific gender. So when you're talking, like you said, brother and sister use the same word. So
Hmm.
how do you know, or how can we know if we're talking about our brother or our sister? Are there any other parts of a sentence that indicate like exactly the person that you're talking about?
Well, it depends on the way the sentence is structured. Of course, there are many words that are not gendered. But for instance, if I want to talk about my sister, and I want to define, and I want to make I want to make the person in front of me understand that I'm talking about my sister, not my brother. You have the possibility to add feminine word just next to the term ndeko. Ndeko means brother and sister in English, in Lingala, but you have the possibility, if you want to define this, to add a feminine or masculine word just behind, in order to indicate to the person you're talking about, your sister and not your brother.
Do you have an example of that? How that
Yes, for
works?
instance, if I want to say my little sister in Lingala, I would say, if I want to say my sister in Lingala, simply, I would say Ndeko nanga ya mwasi. Ndeko, which means brother and sister in Lingala. And behind that, I had Yamwasi. Yamwasi, which means women in Lingala. So Ndeko, and I'm adding Yamwasi, which will make my the person in front of me understand that I'm talking about my sister and not my brother.
Oh, okay. So Ndeko Nyamwasi?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say for your brother?
For my brother, I would say Ndeko Yamobali. Ndeko Yamobali, which means brother.
Yamobadi. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems like something that is really I don't want to say simple because I don't want to make it like I don't want to make it sound like it's like I don't want to trivialize it, but it sounds like uncomplicated.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's really. I mean, from my perspective, for me, it's easy. It's just like what I can say is that it's not easy at the beginning because, of course, in English and in French, everything is gendered. Most of words are gendered, and in Lingala, the only difference is that if you want to gender a word, you need to put another word behind. This is the only. This is the only difference.
I like that. I can get on board with that. Um,
Great.
you mentioned that Lingala being a Bantu language,
Yeah.
and I know that there are many Bantu languages, but do you notice any similarities between Lingala and some of the other Bantu languages of that region? Are they easy to understand one another, maybe for you or in general, or are they very, very different?
Well, there's a lot of similarities that I can see between Bantu languages. For instance, there are a lot of terms in Lingala that comes from other Bantu languages, as Kikongo, which is also spoken in both Congo. There's also a lot of similarities with Sango. Sango, it's a language that is spoken in Central Africa. There's a lot of Lingala words that really looks like some Swahili words. Also, there's a lot of similarities because all these languages comes from um, kingdoms from comes from ancient kingdoms, uh, and despite the colonization, I think through the years, people managed to keep some similarities because at the beginning, all these languages were spoken by the same people, by the same persons that used to live in different kingdoms, but those kingdoms had many similarities. You know, for instance, many Bantu languages that are spoken in both Congo, those languages were spoken in the Congo Kingdom, before the colonization. And this is the reason why, if you go in Cameroon, you're going to see some languages which has which have some similarities with some languages that you're going to see in Congo. And it's also the same for surnames. There's all surnames that I noticed in Cameroon that I also see in my own countries. So it's the same people that just have been separated, through the time. And this is the reason why you see many similarities between the languages.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's what you said earlier. It's like brothers being separated, but they're still
Yeah.
brothers. And I
Yeah.
think that's a perfect way to say that and to acknowledge the enduring legacy of these kingdoms and the that connections that were there before colonization.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, in DRC,
Yeah.
when you go there, how do we hear Lingala used versus the French language?
Well, in DRC, Lingala is very used in the capital, in Kinshasa, because in DRC,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm from DRC and Republic of Congo, and what I've noticed is that Lingala is really spoken in both capitals, in Kinshasa and in Brazzaville. And
Mm-hmm.
DRC is a big country, and in this big country, there's a lot of tribes, there's a lot of
Yeah.
languages, and despite and what is very important to say is that according the place, people are going to speak this or that language more than the others. For instance, if I go in
Mm-hmm.
Kinshasa, many people are going to speak Lingala, they're going to speak Congo, they're going to speak French. If I just go more far, you're going to see that there's other languages that are more spoken. In DRC, there are people who don't speak Lingala. You know, it depends on the place where
Mm-hmm.
you are. But if you go to the capitals, of course, Lingala is one of is with French the languages that are the most spoken.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering because, like, when you go there and let's say as a tourist or as someone who's not Congolese and
Yeah,
they go there and they're going to, the typical hotel, restaurant,
yeah.
park, like, how people just kind of experience things on a surface level.
Mm.
If you're going to a restaurant, and I always bring it back to food somehow, but if you're going to a restaurant in Kinshasa, and you're going there, you're sitting down, they hand you a menu. Is the menu going to be in French?
The menu is going to be in French. Well, because people in DRC and Republic of Congo speak French because French is one of the
Mm,
national languages. So if people notice that you don't speak Lingala or you don't speak any Congolese languages, they're going to talk to you in French, so you can understand
okay.
what you're going to choose for your meal. So there's no real problem for that.
Where do we see the language written? I know you said it's an oral language,
Hmm.
and we hear it a lot in music.
Yeah.
Do we have the chance to see it written anywhere? And at least going around the city on billboards or newspapers or anything like that. Like, where do we have the chance to see Lingala, or do we? Do we have that chance?
We have the chance to see Lingala writing, especially in Bibles. You know,
Okay,
unfortunately,
interesting.
Lingala at the beginning, before the different migratory flows, Lingala was written and spoken at the same time. And with the time, unfortunately, Lingala became more and more oral, and unfortunately, people stopped to write it. And if you want to read it, you need to read the Bible, to read Christian stuff. I mean, in churches, you got some books in Lingala, in Kikongo, in other languages. What I've noticed is that in order to see Lingala writing, you need to check on Jehovah's Witness books, because I think that they are, yeah,
Really?
in Congo, they are the only people who keeps writing in Lingala. Because I went to DRC and Republic of Congo many times, and I used to, I'm a curious person, so I used to read their stuff, and unfortunately, that was the only times when I could see my language writing, you know, and I find it really interesting. And for me, it's a good thing. But unfortunately, what I can say is that unfortunately, Congolese who lives in Congo don't even write in their languages anymore. They only write in French language, English language. But I remain hopeful no matter what. Maybe with the time, Lingala is going to become um, a writing language, because this language was written and spoken, with our elders. But yeah, you can, if you want to see Lingala writing, you need to to check on on Jehovah Witness stuff, then you going to see right.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I always think about languages that are mostly spoken, languages that are mostly oral, and I wonder
Yeah,
where the poets are. Because I always think that poets and people who write poetry, whether they define themselves as poets or not, um, I think that they have a really good understanding of how to preserve a language and how to preserve
yeah,
the nuances and the, you know, especially the beautiful parts of the language.
yeah.
And I don't expect you to have an answer to this, but I do wonder, like, where are the Lingala poets? Like, you know, who's taking this effort to preserve a beautiful language and have it written, and, you know, not in a religious way.
Yeah. To me, first of all, what I can say is that Congolese people are musical people. We live and we die through music. We doing everything with
Hmm.
music. So I think that our poets are most of all are musicians, our
Mm,
singers, our musicians, but also our elders, because
yeah.
in Congolese culture, we elders are very important. The respect of the hierarchy, the respect of elders is very important, and our elders are the one who have the responsibility to share the knowledge, not only knowledge about life, but knowledge about the language. In on my own experience, the persons who have told me about the culture, about Congolese culture, was my grandmother. My grandmother came from DRC in Republic of Congo, and she used to to tell us things about Congolese culture, about her childhood, and for me, it's poetry. Of course, it's not poetry in the way that European people structure it, because European people used to write poets. They used to write books and all that stuff. In our culture, it's very oral, so I think that for me, the our poets are our families, our parents, our elders, all the people that have the knowledge that we don't have anymore, and our musicians. Because in Congolese culture, we sing and dance all the time. It's not just for fun, but it's our way to communicate, and it's our way to share knowledge, to share our emotions, and to share all the things that need to be shared for the next generations. So I would say that our poets, our musicians, our parents, everybody that has knowledge.
We Who can resist listening to like Congolese music? Like, I listen to it and I don't know what anybody's saying, but it's
Mm,
it's it's like it's life changing. It's so good, and it's just, you feel it in your whole body when you're listening to Congolese music. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute, but I
yeah.
just think in terms of, like, you know, poetry and or storytelling, and, you know, leaving that legacy and having
Mm,
something to share, I definitely think that you know, that is really, you know, the Congolese, the Congolese heritage of that, of the music, and sharing the music and sharing the rhythm, um, with all of us, with everybody.
yeah. For me, it's well. I'm really moved by what you're saying, because when I was a kid, music was the only way for us to feel um, proud of our culture, because despite all the discrimination, Paris was a city when people used to hear Congolese music, and it was the only moment when at school people used to talk about Congolese music. It was the only moment when uh, there were no bad words about Congolese culture, about our language. It was great to be Congolese when it came when people were talking about music. Because I felt as a child that, yeah. Congolese music was very people were moved by that music, and I think that I think that what is very important to mention about Congolese music is that first of all, it's a spiritual way to communicate. You know, people most of the time they just enjoy the music, but they most of the time don't know that uh, all the strength and all the emotions that comes from our music, uh, it comes from our connection to the spirits, to the others, to all the things that we cannot see. And I think that this strength, it helps our music to be more heard and to really touch people around the world, because there are a lot of people like you and many others that they don't understand any words, but they are moved by the music, by the sound, by the rhythm, by all the things, and all these things are spiritual. And this is the reason why I told you earlier that we are a spiritual people. We we are spiritual people, and our music, of course, our music is good because we can dance on it and all that stuff. But it's a real connection with the gods, with all the things that we cannot see. And I think that those things really impact our music.
So tell me about in DRC. In DRC,
Yeah.
how are people, or in the Republic of Congo, how are people mixing the French and the Lingala together? Like, it turned into like a new language of its own, maybe that's used by like, younger people, or maybe like on the internet or something. How do these languages get fused together, and how do people code switch with French and Lingala?
Well, what I can say, and I can see that also with English, is that, for instance, and this is our particularity, is the fact that in one sentence you can have English words, French words, and Lingala words. I mean, I think that Congolese people are the professional persons to mix three or four language in the same
Oh
sentence.
wow.
In the same sentence. For instance, if I want to say in Lingala that I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to the airport, I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
Nakokende aéroport. Nakokende, na,
Oh.
it's in English, and aéroport, it's in French. So you have two language mixed. For instance, if I want to mix
Mm-hmm.
English, Lingala, and French, for instance, I can say Alphonse Adaye, uh, Adaye na France. Alphonse Adaye na France, it means Alphonse died in French. Alphonse, we have the word Alphonse, which is a name. Adaye, which is the combination of Lingala, a, and daye, the verb to die in English. Na France, France in French. So you got three languages mixed in one sentence. And I think that it's the result of globalization, but also it's a result of an evolution of Lingala's evolution. I mean, we are Congolese culture, Congolese people are really opened to the world. And what I can notice is the fact that we are trying to, to how can I say that? To keep our roots, but at the same time, we are open to the fact that we can bring some other things that comes from all the places that we have been. So we are very open to the fact of bringing some things in our language, which I think that it's a good thing. But at the same time, I think that it's a good thing to to not to keep the old Lingala, because it's impossible. The world is evolving. We are evolving. It's important to 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 evolve. But what I can say is that we are very open to the world, and I think that it's a good thing because it helps us to understand each other, which is very important in a world where globalization is everywhere.
Now, on the contrary to that question, how does
Yeah.
French and Lingala get mixed in Paris?
What I can say is that it's the same in Paris. We used to switch with French words and Lingala words, thanks to musicians. There are many French artists that come from Congo, and they used to add some Lingala words in their songs. And as a result, there are a lot of French people, white people, that start to to learn some Lingala words thanks to their lyrics. But it's the same as I used to as I told you. I mean, it's we're mixing words. We're mixing words. For instance, if I want to say hi baby, some people would say mbote ma chérie. Mbote means hi in Lingala, and ma chérie means baby, means darling. And this kind of sentence became really famous in
I'm
Paris,
gonna
you know.
borrow that.
Yeah,
The reason why I'm curious to ask you about Paris is because I think that the image that we have of Paris, a lot of people, not
hmm,
just in the US, but around the world, is one that's very white and very blonde, very rich,
yeah,
and I think that people often forget how many people of color live in Paris and how many people of African
yeah,
descent live in Paris. And there's so much representation there that doesn't always get seen by people and by media specifically.
yeah.
And I want to talk about, as someone who I've been to Paris a handful of times, I love visiting Paris. I always have a great time when I'm there. And
Mm,
I admit, like, even as a tourist, I don't often get an opportunity to speak to people who look like me in Paris and people,
mm,
so it bothers me because I know, like, I get on the metro and I see people who look like me, but, I don't see that reflected like in movies or in TV, especially in the US. So I really want to know, let's say we're going to Paris and we want to experience some Congolese culture, food or music or like, a night out. We want to have a night out and we want to do it Congolese style in Paris. Where do we go? What should we do? What are some of your suggestions? How do you think people should do that? How can we engage?
I think that to experience that, I think that what you said earlier was very interesting. Unfortunately, media used to, and still do, unfortunately, uh, I think that what I see on TV is not representative of what I'm seeing when I'm going to Paris. Paris
Mhm.
is is mixed. There's a lot of cultures in Paris. You can see Indian people, African people,
Mhm.
Chinese people. There are so many people in Paris, and in order to
Mhm.
experience Congolese culture through food, through music, there are a lot of neighborhood that you need to visit in Paris. First of all, I would say Chateau Rouge. Chateau Rouge is a place where, for me, it's Kinshasa and Brazzaville at the same time. If you want to go in Africa and remain
Oh
in Paris,
man.
you need to go there. You're going to see all of our
Chateau Rouge.
yeah, you're going to see all of our aunties. You're going to have access to food, to plantains, to rice, to so many things, to music also, because all the neighborhood when you go to Chateau Rouge, you don't feel like you are in France anymore. You feel like
Mm.
you're in Congo. It's
Mhm.
it's like Chinatown. And I don't know where in which country we can see the city, but what I can say is that yeah,
Mhm.
if you want to experience that, you need to go to Chateau Rouge. You need to go um, also to Châtelet-Léal. Châtelet-Léal is a place in Paris where you're going to see a lot of not only Congolese people, but you're going to see a lot of African people. You're going to see Congolese people, Cameroonese people, so many people. But if you want to feel like you are in Congo, go to Chateau Rouge.
What should we do once we get there?
There's so many things that you can do. So many things you can. First of all, what I would suggest is for you to buy some how you call it in English, African fabric, because wax. I don't know if you call it wax in English.
Oh, yeah, like wax or Dutch wax or
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dashiki stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the first thing to do because when my grandma was alive, she used to tell me that when she was younger, um, how can I say that the prints that were in the wax had a meaning. You know, nowadays we are wearing African fabrics because we like the color, we like the style, and that we're wearing it. But at the time, she was telling me that when she was younger, they were not wearing an African fabric just like that, because many prints had a meaning. And she showed me when I was a kid some prints that had a certain meaning, and thanks to her, I fell in love with African fabric. So I would suggest you that the first thing to do is to just buy one African fabric. Then you got the food. There's so many places that you when you can buy some food. You got plantains, you got rice, you got fishes, you got some spices, so many things. Then I would say that you can hear some music in the streets. People used to put some music in the streets. So when you are at Chateau Rouge, you got some Congolese music in the streets. So it's very joyful. It's a joyful place. It's a colorful place, and what I really love about this place is that people you can talk to people. I mean, people are not cold. You can talk to them easily. People are really open, and it's like you feel like, for me, when I'm going there, I feel like I'm at home, you know, because everybody's calling each other auntie, mama. It's like a family, and this is what I really like about Chateau Rouge. And when I feel lonely, when I feel sad, I'm going there because I know that there I'm going to be fine. Even if I don't know anybody, you can talk to someone if even if you don't know that person, but you can talk to someone, have a conversation, which I don't see in other neighborhood in Paris, because it's a different culture. Congolese culture is very open culture. We can talk to people in the street, and and what is very good is the fact that despite the fact that we are in France, Congolese people um, manage to keep that spirit, of talking to people no matter where they're from, of talking easily to people even if they don't know them.
Tell us about your platform and tell us what you're doing
Yeah.
online with Lingala and how you've been able to share it. Tell us why you started, and most importantly, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah. Well, what I can say first of all is that many Lingala speakers in Paris want to stay connected to their roots thanks to many things. And depending on your family, there are a lot of Congolese people who speak their language. I mean, Congolese people who are born in Paris. There are a lot of Congolese people who speak Lingala, but there are a lot of Congolese people who don't speak Lingala. And I received a lot of demands, and through the time, I I noticed that it was a need for many people, and this is the reason why I created Lingala Lessons. Lingala Lessons is a platform that helps people to have the effective method for engaging in real conversations in Lingala and discovering Congolese culture. And it's a way for me to perpetuate this culture and link that Congolese living abroad have with their roots, and I'm really proud of it. For me, it's a way to do what my grandmother used to do, is that sharing with me all the things that she knew from her country, because you cannot move forward if you don't know where you come from, and this is really the the, the main purpose of this platform. And you can find it on Instagram, Lingala Lessons, on TikTok, Facebook. I'm really productive on Instagram. I'm trying to be more productive on TikTok, but yeah, people can find me in this social media. But yeah, the main purpose of Lingala Lessons is just to share this culture and to make people discover, to give the opportunity to people to discover this culture, not just Congolese people but other people, because among my students I have so many profiles. I have I have white people who are married to Congolese people. They just need to discover their partner's culture. I got Congolese who are born here like me, but They don't know the language. They want to learn more about the language and the culture. I got Congolese who speak Lingala, but they want to learn more about the culture. So I have different profiles of people. And for me, it's very rewarding to share what
Yeah.
my parents and my grandmother told me. And for me, it's rewarding because I'm learning a lot from them too.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy that you're doing this. And I absolutely, I found you on Instagram and I love what you're doing on Instagram. I absolutely love your content. And I think you're just doing amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I will share the links to Lingala Lessons. I will share the links in the show notes of this episode so that people who are looking for you can click the link and find you right away.
Thank you.
Melissa, thank you so much again for this conversation. I've really enjoyed learning about Lingala, about Congolese culture from you, and this was a really wonderful conversation to have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. That was very rewarding and very pleasant to talk about this with you because it's something that for me it's very important to share this and to keep that because it's so beautiful and thank you for the opportunity that you gave me to talk about that.
Absolutely. I like to end each episode on the same question, which is,
Yeah.
do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Lingala to share and to teach us?
Well, I have some words of wisdom that I'd like to share with you. The
Okay.
words of wisdom are the followings. I would say it in Lingala, then I'm going to translate it in English. In Lingala, it's mwana muke abetaka bunda bakolope babinaka, which means in Lingala that a child can drum and make the other ones dance. It is saying that this words of wisdom aims to encourage transgenerational dialogue and to make people aware that each of us, whatever our age, can learn from the other and transmit knowledge to the other. That the little ones, that the younger people can teach to the elder people, and that the elder people can teach to the younger people.
I like that. I like that a lot. I want to try to say it, and am I do this in every episode. Just so you know,
Great.
at the end of every
Mm.
episode, I like to try something new. I will not promise that I will get it right, so I want to apologize to my Lingala speakers out there if I
It's
if I
okay.
really mess this up, but I'm trying my best. So, okay, so you can yeah, let's do it word by word and you say it and I'll repeat after you and then we'll try to put it all together in the end.
Okay. So the
Okay.
first word, mwana,
Mwana
muke,
muke
abetaka,
abetaka
mbunda,
munda
bakolo,
bakolo
pe,
pe
babinaka.
babinaka.
Yeah.
Okay. Mwana muke abetaka mbunda bakolo pe babinaka.
Great. Great. You're doing great.
Okay.
For your first sentence in Lingala, for me, it's great.
My first Lingala sentence. I
Yeah.
love this. This is a really great saying, I think, that, is encouraging, like you said, and full of wisdom. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And yeah, and for letting me try. And again, don't slaughter me, Lingala speakers.
I think
I'm
that they will
kidding.
be kind. They will be kind, I think.
I hope so. I hope so. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much again. And before I let you go, really quickly, after you've been speaking to someone for a while, someone in Congo or in Paris, someone Congolese, and you are about to go your separate ways, what is the best way in Lingala to say goodbye?
Well, you got two ways. You can say tomonani, which means see you later. Or you can also say tikala malamu, which means take care.
Tikala malamu.
Yeah.
I like that one. That sounds nice to say.
Yeah.
That's fun to say. Melissa, tomonani, tikala malamu.
Thank you, El. Tomona ni tikala malamu, El.
And thank you again. And I will be talking to you soon. Bye.
Bye.